Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into the used car archives, looking specifically at a really key time for budget cars in Europe, 2009 to 2013. We've got this great source material, Budget Diesel Car Reviews 2009-2013, and it lines up five of the small diesel hatchbacks that everyone seemed to be driving back then. So our mission today, we want to quickly get to the heart of what these cars were really like. We're talking Ford Fiesta, Renault Clio 3, Peugeot 206 plus a Son, the 207, and the Dacia Sandero I. We're trying to figure out, what made a smart buy back then, and maybe more importantly, what lessons can we pull from that for dealing with older, high-mileage budget cars right now?
Exactly, and the reviews gave us a solid base, and they were looking at six main things: comfort, how much space you actually got, speed well, horsepower really, reliability, maintenance costs, and that typical 3-year ownership plan. Because it wasn't just the price tag, was it? It was about the total cost and usability. That's what defined value.
Okay, let's kick off with the engines. It's kind of fascinating cars from different countries, different manufacturers, but the performance, it's all squeezed into this really narrow band. What does that tell us, that tight horsepower range?
Well, it tells you pretty clearly they were built for one main thing: efficiency. When you look at the numbers, yeah, it's like 68 horsepower at the low end, maybe peaking around 92 horsepower max. This wasn't about 0 to 60 times, not at all. It was all about stretching that liter of diesel as far as possible. That 68 HP in the Ford Fiesta's 1.4 TDCi, slow maybe, but it sipped fuel, exactly what buyers wanted.
Right. And let's just pause on those engine acronyms, TDCi, HDI. They were everywhere back then. What did they actually mean, technically speaking?
Yeah, good point. They both signal modern, efficient diesel tech for the time. Ford's TDCi is turbo diesel common rail injection. Peugeot's HDI is high-pressure direct injection. Both basically mean common rail systems. So you get really precise fuel delivery under high pressure. That's the key to getting good mileage from those small 1.4, 1.6-liter engines. Efficiency first.
But, okay, small engines, working hard, often high mileage. That's got to lead to problems eventually, right? And this is where the reviews get really interesting. They point out these shared reliability issues. Doesn't matter if it's a Ford, Peugeot, or Renault badge hit high mileage, and the same things tend to crop up. Why those specific parts? Turbo, EGR valve, injectors. What makes them the usual suspects?
It's kind of the inevitable result of chasing efficiency and meeting emissions rules on a budget. The turbo, essential for power in a small diesel, but it's under a lot of stress. Miss an oil change, use the wrong oil, and it's often the first expensive part to go. Big wear issues. Then the EGR, the exhaust gas recirculation valve. Its job is emissions control, feeding exhaust back into the engine to cool combustion and cut no knocks, but diesel exhaust is sooty, so over time that valve just gets clogged up with carbon, performance drops, fuel economy suffers, and eventually, it fails. Needs cleaning or replacing.
So the tech that made them clean and efficient also became their Achilles heel down the line. Interesting. But even with those common risks, the reviews did single out a couple of models as being, well, maybe a bit tougher. Which ones seemed to hold up better?
Yeah, two stood out a bit. The Renault Clio 3, using that 1.5 DCI engine, was often noted for having pretty durable diesel engines overall. If you maintained it, it seemed quite resilient. But the real standout for, let's say, rugged simplicity, that was the Dacia Sandero I. The reviews really praise its straightforward mechanics. Less to go wrong, basically, which meant lower potential repair bills.
And simple mechanics. What does that actually translate to in real terms for an owner? Because that seems like key advice for buying any older car, doesn't it?
It generally means less complex systems overall. Maybe slightly less sophisticated emissions gear compared to the others, fewer sensors, maybe engine management that isn't quite as pushed to the absolute limit. Dacia's whole philosophy back then was about robust, proven tech over bleeding-edge features. Fewer things to break, parts might be cheaper or easier to access. That simplicity is golden when you're talking about a 10-year-old budget car. Less potential for wallet shock.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. Okay, so performance was broadly similar. Reliability had common themes, but some nuances. So the buying decision often came down to something more basic, like where are you actually going to drive this thing and who's coming with you?
Absolutely. That's exactly what the suitability summary highlights. It really splits into two camps: the city runabouts and the ones better suited for longer journeys or carrying more people.
Okay, let's start with the city cars, the ones designed for nipping around town, commuting.
Right. For that, the reviews pointed mainly to the Ford Fiesta and the Peugeot 206 Plus Sign. The Fiesta was seen as, excellent for the daily commute, compact, easy to handle, decent enough for 4 people on shorter trips. The 206 Plus was even more city-focused. Really small hatchback, great for tight spots, short hops, But the reviews were clear on the trade-off. Long drives, probably going to feel cramped, especially for anyone stuck in the back.
Right. Practicality sacrificed for that compact size. So conversely, if you were doing regular motorway miles or needed to fit the family in, you'd be looking at the Clio 3 or the Peugeot 207. How do they offer more comfort?
Yeah, they were just physically a bit bigger. The Clio 3 had 5 seats, better headroom generally, and the reviewers noted its engine torque actually made it feel quite comfortable cruising on the motorway. Less stressed, maybe. The Peugeot 207 was positioned as slightly more upmarket than the 206 Plus built. So again, bigger inside, definitely better legroom, maybe a nicer interior finish. Made it a solid pick for those intercity trips.
But then there was the surprise package, wasn't there? The one that may be punched above its weight on practicality for families. The Dacia Sandero I is.
Yeah, the Sandero really shone in that specific area, according to the reviews. Despite its budget positioning, it delivered on space. For its class, it was noted as having a really spacious interior, properly seats 5, practical boot, and it was rated very good for longer trips. So yeah, if you needed a dependable, roomy family hauler on a strict budget back then, the Sandero was apparently the smart, no-frills pick.
Okay, so performance is pretty level. The choice mostly boils down to space needs. Now, let's get to the bit that really determines if owning one of these long-term is a success or a nightmare: maintenance. For anyone looking at one of these cars today, even older ones, these maintenance points from the reviews are probably still critical, right?
Oh, absolutely critical. This is where you save money or spend a fortune. The good news, though, is that the basic routine stuff was pretty consistent across all 5 models, which helps if you know the schedule.
So what were the key numbers? The baseline service intervals everyone needed to know.
2 numbers to remember: 10,000 and 15,000 kilometers. Oil changes every 10K. That was the recommendation across the board, no stretching it. And the diesel fuel filter, every 15,000 kilometers. Again, consistent. Keeping that fuel system clean was, and still is, vital for the health of those high-pressure injectors, especially as they age.
Right, so those are the regular, predictable costs. But the reviews also flagged that big, looming financial hurdle, the high mileage inspection. What's the crucial mileage window, and what are they checking?
Yeah, the danger zone mentioned was typically between 100,000 and 120,000 kilometers. That's the point where you had to be proactively checking the 2 potential big-ticket failures: the turbocharger and, crucially, the timing belt. Ignoring that, especially a timing belt check, you're basically gambling with the entire engine. The repair cost could easily write the car off.
So let's map that on to the standard 3-year ownership plan the reviews mentioned. How did that structure help owners manage these costs and risks?
It was about phasing things. Year 1, if you bought one, say, 2 or 3 years old, was mostly about getting into the rhythm: regular servicing, oil changes at 10K, tracking fuel use, making sure it's running right. Relatively low-cost stuff.
Okay, then year 2. Sounds like when the normal wear and tear items start needing attention.
Exactly. Year 2 is budgeting for the predictable replacements. Things like brake pads, maybe tires, getting the suspension checked over. And crucially, depending on where the mileage fell, Year 2 might be the time for that first proper turbo inspection by someone who knows what they're looking for. Any excessive play, oil leaks, weird noises, catching problems early.
Which leaves year 3 as the big one, the potentially expensive one, aimed squarely at avoiding catastrophic failure.
That's the one. Year 3 often lines up with hitting that critical 100K to 120K kilometer mark, so the major service check happens then. And priority number 1 is inspecting that timing belt. If there's no clear record of it being changed recently, you just do it. Preventative maintenance? Yes, it's a significant cost, probably the biggest single maintenance item, but it's far cheaper than a new engine. This structured approach was key to keeping these cars affordable long-term. And really, if you tie it all together, the final takeaway from those 2009-2013 reviews was pretty clear. And it's a big if you did the maintenance properly, especially hitting those crucial checks like the timing belt, then all 5 of these budget diesels could actually do the job well, whether it was just commuting or longer family trips. The real deciding factor for buyer satisfaction back then seemed to be just picking the right size and space for your actual needs.
Right, so for you listening, what's the distilled message? Well, there's a clear split, isn't there? You had the Ford Fiesta and the Peugeot 206 Plus, definitely optimized for city driving, commuting. Compactness was king there, maybe comfort less so. But if you needed more room, maybe for family, maybe for longer distances, then the Renault Clio 3, the slightly more polished Peugeot 207, and particularly based on these reviews, the Dacia Sandero I were the stronger contenders. That Sandero's focus on maximizing usable space on a budget really seems like a standout point from this look back. But the lesson that echoes loudest, the one that applies to buying any older high-mileage diesel today, is all about that preventative maintenance. Sticking to the schedule avoids disaster. So we'll leave you with this thought building directly on that critical year 3 check. When you're looking at an older budget diesel, why is the timing belt, arguably even more than the turbo, the single component representing the biggest financial cliff edge? And why is religiously checking it around that 100,000 to 120,000 kilometer mark the absolute most crucial piece of advice we can pull from these old reviews? Something to think about. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.